So this is Paladin Legendary Tier List. I used to do these a few months ago, and then I didn't really do any since the Mage one. But I think it's just fun. I really like this concept. It's something I just really like to do. So the way the tiers are set up is S tier are amazing legendaries that have been used in both Wild and Standard a lot. Usually they will have been staples in the class for a long time, or still currently are. Good cards are legendaries that, saw a little bit of play, maybe in only one, maybe two expansions. They probably weren't, super amazing, or if they saw, continual play, or they were just kind of okay. Bad legendaries are just, they're just not very good. There's nothing really to say about them. They're just not amazing. Outclassed, of course, are legendaries that are strictly outclassed by other cards, whether it be something like King Dread in Hunter, which is kind of just strictly outclassed by Trapdoor Spider, a 2-mana card, or, cards of that nature. And then for, atrociously terrible cards that have seen absolutely no play whatsoever and are just bad. Starting with the last Kaleidosaur. It's a bad card. Do I really need to explain why? You get, after you cast 5 spells with the, I think this is the buff version too. It used to be more, if I remember correctly. You cast 5 spells and you get, Galvadon. Galvadon was not really a very good win condition. You'd have to get Stealth, Wind Fury, and then a lot of attack buffs on Galvadon for it to do anything, which was incredibly inconsistent. There's even a song about it, by Brian Kibler about how bad the card is. Yeah. Crystal Smith Kangor. I'm going to put it as a pretty good legendary. It's 2 mana, 1/4, Divine Shield, Lifesteal, your healing is doubled. It saw some pretty decent play over its lifespan, both in Standard and Wild. It's just seen some play. It doesn't really make the cut anymore because there's just way better cards, but it's definitely not an outclassed or a bad card by any means. Kangor's Endless Army. So, as far as I know, the only time this card ever really saw play was in the expansion it came out in Boomsday, and then it wasn't even that great in that expansion, so I don't want to put it in good. I think I have to put it in bad. It's just not actually that good of a legendary. It's pretty terrible. Let's be real here. Kangor's doesn't really do anything. Yeah, you resurrect 3 mechs, but they're gonna suck, and you would never play this in a mech paladin in current year, or ever again, probably. Prince Liam. So Prince Liam actually did see a little bit of play when it came out in the Witchwood, but it's just kind of a pretty mediocre card. Transform all 1-cost cards in your deck into legendary minions. It's just not actually that great of a card. Badlands Bandits. 6 mana to get a board and put some cards in your hand. You get the 3/2s with effects. It's actually a pretty decent card. It saw a little bit of play in Even Paladin. I don't know if it actually still makes the cut. It might. I wouldn't be surprised. It's a pretty decent card. And it saw some play in Standard. So I have to put it, by definition, in the good tier. I think it's just a pretty okay card overall. Another pretty okay card is Wicker Flame. So Wicker Flame used to be a 2/2, and it was really bad. But then it got buffed in Caverns of Time to being a 3/3, and it's actually pretty good. Do I have multiple Wicker Flames on here? I might. Yeah, I have 2 Wicker Flames. Oops. It's just what happens when it's a Caverns of Time card. Sometimes you get 2. Anyway, yeah, Wicker Flame is honestly just a pretty decent card. It probably doesn't see play anymore because Tigress Plushie is just kind of strictly outclassing it, as well as Deputization Aura. So it makes me upset that I think I have to put it in the outclassed tier by definition. I'm going to change it. Not necessarily bad. So I think Wicker Flame has to go there just because, by definition, it is outclassed by another card. Amethyst. I think Amethyst is a pretty good legendary. I actually just changed. Anyway, back to Amethyst. I think Amethyst is actually just a pretty decent legendary. It's seeing some play in Wild, some play in Standard. It's not an amazing card by any means, but it gets its job done. It's hard to kill, so it gets its effect off usually twice. It is really good at drawing cards. It's really good at buffing your board. It's really good at debuffing the enemy board. It's really good at what it does. It's just, it's a 7 mana card, so it's kind of hard to use in aggro paladins. And for the last, forever, aggro paladin has been one of the better ways to play paladin. You can play, this is actually a pretty decent card in odd paladin, I will not lie. It's just a third +2/+2 to your board. It's 7 mana, yes, but it also makes it so your board is a lot harder to clear at the same time. Purator, this card is nuts. The Purator made a tier 1 Paladin deck when it came out with the Light Ray Paladin, Giants Paladin. And that deck really hasn't been the same since it got a bunch of nerfs. Purator got nerfed, Light Ray got nerfed, and the deck isn't really playable anymore. But it was pretty good, I will say. And Purator was insane in Standard. Obviously, it got nerfed. It used to not be a mech, which is kind of funny. It should have been, but they added that, which changed a lot of the tribal synergies of Pure Paladin, and Purator. But I think Purator is a very powerful card. It's just so much card draw. It did so much for you. Great card. Dragon Rider Talrithia, that's going to be the first LOL question mark card. What the fuck were they thinking with this card? 3 mana, 3/3, Death Rattle, give a dragon in your hand +3/+3, and this Death Rattle. This card was fucking terrible. I don't remember if this card saw any play at all during Descent of Dragons, because I don't think anyone played it, because it was so terrible. And I know it hasn't seen play in Wild, so yeah. This card's just bad. Steward the Steward, I have to put it in good tier, even though it's a bad card, because it did see play in Odd Paladin for a little while. It was pretty decent in Odd Paladin, like I'm saying. Obviously, it's 3 mana, 3/3. Death Rattle, give the next Silverhand Recruit. You summon +3/+3 in this Death Rattle. A lot better than this. Because this is dragon in your hand. It doesn't, stay forever, where this would. You can have no minions on board, no minions in hand, but press your hero power, and this will still go off. Stuart got cut incredibly fast from Odd Paladin. I think 1 or 2 expansions fast. So it hasn't really been seen since, but, Feckle. The call has seen play basically since it came out. It's not always the best way to play an aggro paladin, but it's usually a good way to play it. You play the call and you play double mountain giants, and your opponent just fucking cries, because what do they do against that, right? Usually it's impossible to deal with for most decks. In current year, it's a lot easier, but over the years, the best way to deal with giant minions that early was devolve, and you couldn't devolve molten giants. So that's why Thakal Mountain Giants was Thakal Molten Giant was so good for a long time. It just made your aggro paladin have insane lethality. You still run Thakal in Holy Wrath Paladin, of course, because it does the same thing. But Thakal is just a pretty good card. It's seen a lot of play over the years, definitely more than these cards. Any of these. So that's for sure. Commander Risa, it's just a bad card. It saw, I think, a tiny bit of play, but not seriously. People experimented with it when it came out, but it was just not a good card. What do you expect, right? 1 mana secrets triggering twice doesn't matter. Maybe if it was Battle Cry, your secrets trigger twice for the rest of the game or something, yeah, it'd be pretty decent, maybe. But I don't know, it's just bad. Paladin Secret synergy cards are pretty terrible usually, because you don't care about synergizing with 1 mana secrets. You just care about, thinning your deck with 1 mana secrets. Nozdormu the Timeless. 4 mana, 8/8, Battlecry, set each player to 10 mana crystals. Yeah, this card's nuts. This card has seen continual play since it came out. It's the only ramp card in the game that's not a druid card, if I remember correctly. It's the only reason that slow paladin decks even slightly function. You play it with Red Scale Dragon Tamer, and then you can draw this, tutor it. It's the only way that paladin decks, slow paladin decks, can play the game. If you don't draw Nas or Red Scale, you pretty much always lose as a slow Paladin deck because they fucking suck. So, yeah, you definitely want Nas. Nas is just such a good card. Sir Finley of the Sands. No, it's a bad card. I mean, it's sad. Like, yeah, it's seen. There's a difference between a card being kind of okay in a good deck versus a card being, a whatever, we need a 30th card in a bad deck, which is Reno Paladin. Reno Paladin sucks. It's a terrible deck. Like, I think in Standard, Finley was okay, but I mean, it's been so long that I can only remember, like, current Reno Paladin, so I'll put it in good, because it was. I also just like Finley as a card. This is one of my favorite cards thematically. I love it. But it's just bad. 2-mana, 2/3, Battle Cry. No duplicates, get an upgraded hero power. Discover an upgraded hero power. I mean, it's an awesome effect. And it's not. The card itself isn't bad. Or that bad. It's just Reno Paladin is fucking atrociously terrible. Like, there's no way to win the game in Reno Paladin, which holds it back so much. So I just yeah. Sir Finley the Intrepid. It's a pretty good card. It's seeing a lot of play in Standard because, I mean, 3-mana, 2/3, Murloc, Battlecry. If you've excavated twice, transform all enemy minions into 1/1 Murlocs. That's an incredibly powerful one-sided effect. You have access to, AoE damage that can kill those 1/1s, and it is a transform effect, so it gets rid of, Death Rattles. It gets them out of pools for Resurrection. It's, an okay card, to be honest. I wouldn't say that, it's amazing. It's definitely not, this good, but I don't think it's as bad as these 4 or less by any means. Lanessa Sunsorrow. Lanessa was pretty much always seeing play her entire existence in Standard, if I remember correctly. You would play her with, Stegodon mount and a bunch of buff cards, and you'd be so happy because you'd play all your buff cards throughout the game, and then, your opponent's finally okay, I finally got through, and then you drop Lanessa and has one final bomb, and it was just so backbreaking for your opponent to deal with, a giant minion like this. And it would also summon more minions, and it would also have Divine Shield. It would also draw you some cards. It's so hard to deal with. The card sees absolutely no play now, because obviously, but, I mean, yeah. So, functionally speaking, for Uther, if I'm going based off of my tier list, I have to put him right here, the way that I've defined the tier list, right? Because it saw play in 2 expansions, and it was pretty good in those 2 expansions. However, it was really fucking good in one of those expansions. Oh god, what expansion was it? Was it Rosticons? Or was it Boomsday? It was one of those 2. Exodia Paladin was the best deck in the game for a while. I think it got nerfed, but it was the best deck at the beginning of the expansion. And it was so good. All you would do is just keep bouncing it with the different Brewmasters. You would bounce them in your hand. You would have the Pixie if you were on the coin, and it made it so you could combo that way, making your turn even more explosive on the coin. It was just so good. This deck, I don't really know what else to say. The Exodia Paladin was a tier 1, best deck in the game at one point, and you can't do that without Uther, so yeah. The Countess. Countess also falls into, the tier these other cards, less so than Uther. I'm going to put Uther over here. Pure Paladin was really good for a really long time, and the Countess is part of the main reason why. 7-mana, 7/7. If your deck has no neutral cards, get 3 legendary invitations to your hand. I think it would make them cost 0, if I remember correctly, what the invitations did, and they were 2 mana. They would give you a discover a 0-cost legendary, and sometimes that was fucking insane. I've had games in Wild where I would play the Countess, I would get Kragwa, play that so I would hold my spells, get Kragwa, then I would get a bunch more, and then I would get Shutterwalk, and I would get 1,000,000, and then I just have 1,000,000 freaking legendaries. It was so cool. It wasn't great, it was terrible in Wild, but the deck is so much fun in Wild. And of course, it was incredibly, incredibly good in Standard. Anyone that's played Standard while Pure Paladin was there knows that it's great. So yeah. Cariel, I'd say, is a good card. I was considering putting it up here, but it's not actually that great. Like, yes, Cariel saw play in like a fair few decks, but she doesn't really see play anymore. She falls off in experiment. Like, she's one of those cards that people put in their deck, and then the more they play it, they realize, oh, Cariel isn't that good, and then she gets cut. So it's kind of hard to judge her because on paper she's a really good card, but in practice she's kind of not that amazing. 4 mana, 4/3, Rush Divine Shield. Whenever this minion attacks, reduce the cost of. Sorry, reduce the cost of all holy spells in your hand by 1. Like I'm saying, it's kind of a bait card. Cariel is fine. It's not a terrible card, but as people experiment more and more with Paladin decks, they realize, oh wait, Cariel's not that great, and she usually gets cut. Even Holy Wrath doesn't run her, and like Holy Wrath is the one deck you would feel like should run a card like that. Rise to the occasion. This is arguably the worst quest line. Actually, I don't think it's arguable. I think it is the worst quest line. You know, why would you ever play this over Odd Paladin and Wild? There's just no reason. And in Standard, it was so hard to do. You had to play like 9 1-mana cards, which sucks. Playing 1-mana cards is bad. We already learned that with the Marsh Queen, like 6 years before this came out. 5 something. I don't know. Like multiple years before this came out, we learned that having to play a fuck ton of 1-mana cards is bad. And, the quest rewards aren't even that good. You get a 1/4 weapon, which is okay, I guess. Warrior draws a weapon for doing an easier thing. Not necessarily easier, I guess, but a better thing of playing 2 to 3 pirates, depending on, the state of the card. It gives you an upgraded hero power, which is okay, I guess. It's fine. You don't really have much here. You didn't really have much dude synergy in Standard at the time when this card came out as well. And then you would play, and then you would get, the upgraded Cariel, which is 5 mana, 7/7, Battle Cry. Your dudes have +2/+2 for the rest of the game, which is, that one was okay. It's about the same. It's better than all the other 5 mana +2/+2s because it's permanent, but it was just so hard to complete. You had to play like fucking 9 3-mana minions, or 3-mana cards. Like, what is that? It's so hard to complete, and it didn't see very much play at all. Anachronos sees a lot of play, currently still sees play, saw a lot of play in Standard. I mean, it's just really powerful dragon. In Wild, it goes hand in hand with Nosdormu, the Timeless, as your 2 dragons for your 2 dreads, for your 2 red scale dragon tamers. Jesus, it's so hard to say names of cards. And Anachronos is just really powerful. It's 7 mana, 8/8. Get rid of their minions. They're never coming back because you're just going to probably kill them. Or if they do come back, you can kill the minions anyway because you have 2 turns to go towards this. You'll be on 9 mana if you play Anachronos on 7. Yeah, Anachronos is a little slow in today's day and age, to be honest. It's not. If Anachronos costs 6 mana, I think it would actually be a genuinely good card. Because part of what Anachronos is good at is dealing with gigantic minions through Lotheb. That's where Anachronos shines. And usually that happens on turn 6. That's when that's happening. Anachronos costs 7 mana. So it's a bit awkward to, get him out. Terralion the Tenured. I mean, it's a bad card. Like, Big Paladin at the time of Terralion coming out didn't really function. Big Paladin is like a deck that they keep trying to push, and it's actually never that great. And Terralion is kind of like a symptom of that. Terralion himself is actually a pretty powerful card if he, wasn't like a Big Paladin card. 8 mana, 3/12, rush. Whenever this attacks, a minion sends attack and health 3. If this was just like a 6 mana card, 6 mana, I don't know, 3/9, that could be fair, to be honest. It would have been a pretty decent card, but it's a Big Paladin card, so it has to have like the 2 mana attacks, get like pretty bad stats overall. So, yeah, it's just a bad card. The Leviathan, really powerful card. Most of the Colossal minions are really good. I'd say, actually, are all of them good? I think every single Colossal has seen play in some way, shape, or form. Maybe Gaia is like the worst one. Yeah, anyway. The Leviathan. This card's really fucking good. 7 mana, 4/5 mech that you can make cheaper using mech synergy is the thing people have done. People have run this card in Mech Paladin. It's not amazing, to be honest, but you can also tutor it with Timeline Accelerator to cost 5 mana, and then it's really powerful. And then, Rush, Divine Shield after this attacks, Dredge, and then it summons a 4-2 that after it Rush, Divine Shield after it attacks draws a card. It just gives you so much, board clear, and you can Dredge, and you can draw a card, and you can, have a lot of flexibility because of it, and because it's a Divine Shield, you can just play it outright on 7 on an empty board, and it's not going to die as often. It's just a really good card. It's seen a lot of play in Standard. It still sees play in Wild. It's just a very, very good card. Rooney Time Explorer. This card's fucking broken. Okay, so 3 mana, 3/4, Battlecry, Discover a location of the future. Every single Paladin deck that can run Rooney runs Rooney. It's so powerful in Holy Wrath. It's so powerful in Reno. It's so powerful in Control Paladin. It's good in, Showdown Paladin lists. It's just a very, very good card because it offers you an insane amount of flexibility. There's, 8 locations, and almost all of them are good. I think, the worst one is, the Get 3 Secrets one, and that's not even that bad. All things considered, because it has 2 durability, so you get you'll make up for it, right? For the mana cost, because it's 3 plus 3 is 6, and if you get 6 secrets, it's 6 mana, right? As well as you get the 3/4 anyway. Rooney is just really powerful. I don't see a world where this card stops seeing play anytime soon. I think this card is probably sometimes. I think some people have been playing this in Odd Paladin personally. That's how good this card is. I've seen it in Odd Paladin lists. Valenier. Valenier is a pretty good weapon. It synergizes incredibly well with Lanessa Sunsoro because, obviously, right? Valenier was not amazing by any means. It should be here, but I'm going to put it right here just because I like the card. It saw some pretty decent amount of play when it came out. It didn't really. It kind of fell off over time because value just gets worse and worse as more expansions are added to a standard format. In a 4-set format, a card like Valenier is a lot better. In a 6-set format, Valenier is fucking terrible, and that's why Valenier is terrible and Wild. You got an 800 set format. I don't know how many sets there are off the top of my head. A lot. And yeah, 6 mana, 4/2, Death Rattle, give a minion in your hand +4/+2. When it dies, re-equip this. It's just fine, right? It's just a lot of value. It's a lot of buffing. It's a lot of damage from the weapon. It's just fine. High Zarkiarel. This card sucks. This card was so bad that Pure Paladin lists were not running it. It's 8 mana, 7/5. Battlecry, if your deck contains no neutral cards, gain Rush, Lifesteal, Taunt, and Divine Shield for an 8 mana fucking card. What? This card is so bad. This card is actually outclassed completely. It's strictly just worse than, everything. Right? It's worse than the Varian Legendary that came out in United in Stormwind. Yeah, it doesn't have Lifesteal, but, it's just better, because that one draws 3 cards. This card's just so terrible. High Abazalura. I'm considering if I put it in S or A because it wasn't a really powerful deck in Murloc Paladin. Actually, no, it's definitely going in S tier. Murloc Paladin was really, really good for a couple expansions, I'd say, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was only one expansion, actually. Not remembering. You'd get Prismatic. And it was pretty decent in a big Paladin where you'd only have one spell, or you'd have a quest, and then you would play Allura quest, and then you'd get to the front lines or whatever it's called, and it's or you would do that with Murlocs, and Allura saw a lot of play in multiple decks where you just want to cheat out one gigantic spell, and Allura's good there. Tip the Scales, I think it was called, is where Allura would see a lot of play in Standard. It's just really good card. Kotori Lightblade. Kotori is a really good card. Genuinely. 2 mana, 2/3. After you cast a holy spell on this, cast it again on another friendly minion. It's so good in aggro Paladin decks. The issue is, inadvertently, Kotori fucking sucks now because Kotori and the 10 mana Garden spell that was, give 5/5 and Divine Shield synergized so fucking well together, and that card didn't get reverted for some reason. No reason at all. So Katori is like just strictly worse than he would be right now. I think that's genuinely why Katori isn't a good card right now, is that, the Undersea Gardens card, whatever, I don't remember what it's called, got nerfed and then not reverted. And if it did get reverted, we'd be seeing a lot of like Katori aggro Paladin. But we're not, because fuck me, I guess. Lady Liadrin. 7 mana, 4/6, Battlecry, add a copy of each spell you cast on friendly characters the game to your hand. It's better than Linus of Sunsorrow, even though they're functionally similar, because Libram Paladin. Libram Paladin was a good deck. All expansions it was in. Every expansion, Libram Paladin was playable, and Liadrin is a really good legendary in that deck. Liadrin saw some play in Wild for a long time too in Libram Paladin, but then Libram Paladin just isn't really a playable deck in Wild anymore. It's way too slow. If Penflinger was a card, it might be playable, but it's just not. So it kind of sucks to suck, to be honest. But yeah, Libram Paladin was really, really good. Liadrin, top legendary kind of for that deck. Very powerful. High Lord 4 Dragon. So this card is bad, but it did see play for one expansion, and I don't even know if it saw play the entire expansion. 6 mana, 5/5, Divine Shield. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, give a minion in your hand +5/+5. This was a part of the loses Divine Shield package thing that they were doing in United and Stormwind with, Prismatic Jewel Kit and High Lord 4 Dragon. They eventually brought it back with the Glowfly. That's like a 4/3 that draws a card whenever a Divine Shield goes away, and like Spotlight, which summons a 5/5 and removes a Divine Shield. They had all those, newer cards, but 4 Dragon saw a lot of play at the time in like, aggro hand buff Paladin. And it was just good. I mean, it was just a pretty good minion. Like I'm saying, 5/5 Divine Shield is like an okay stat line for 6 mana. It's not amazing, but the fact that like if you would just pop like 3 Divine Shields in the turn you played it, which is very doable, it would just give you like fucking 15/15 to your hand. Like, it was really good. And that's why it saw a lot of play. Didn't really see play past that expansion, but so that just happens. Some cards are just like that. So as I am recording this video, it is March 24th, 24. Pipsy is not really a playable card. Paladin does not run this card at all. It's not very good in Standard. I don't see this card really doing much for Standard anytime soon. It's just not that good of a card. There's just no big minions in Standard currently. Like, yeah, you can cheat this out with Kangor, and then it's really good. 7 mana, 4/4. Death Rattle, summon a Divine Shield, Rush, Taunt minion from your deck. That's pretty good. The issue is, there fucking aren't any in Standard. There aren't any big Divine Shield, Rush, and Taunt minions in Standard that don't suck. So Pipsy just, like, functionally doesn't work. Nozari. Nozari is also going to go in the lull tier. This card fucking ass, dude. This card is so bad. 10 mana, 4/12 Dragon. Battlecry, restore both heroes to full health. I mean, the effect isn't bad. The body is fine. It costs 10 mana, dude. Like, you're never playing this card. Like, the idea is that you're supposed to play it with, like, Nozdormu, right? But who cares? You can do a million better things at 10 mana than just heal yourself to full. Because you can heal yourself to full without running a fucking 10 mana 4/12. That's how Paladin does. They heal themselves to full all the time. It's just, Nozari's just a bad card. Like, obviously bad. It's just strictly worse than Reno. And, like, does that need to say much? That a card that's 4 mana more is strictly worse than one of the best cards ever printed? Like, duh. What is it? Ladric the Pure, also a fucking lol question mark card. 7 mana, 3/7. Actually, no, this is strictly outclassed. 7 mana. Yeah. Yeah, change the... Yeah, this is strictly outclassed by fucking everything, actually, right? Like, Shrink Ray, Finley outclasses it. So bad. 7 mana, 3/7, Battlecry, change all enemy minions attack to 1. I mean, this card's just so bad. Shrink Ray. You have what is it? It's the dual class 1 mana spell that sets the minions attack to 1 in with Priest. Obviously, Finley the Intrepid outclasses it. I mean, this card's just terrible. I don't even want to talk about it, to be honest. Bolvar Fireblood. I mean, this card's just bad. 5 mana, 1/7 undead. I didn't even know he was an undead. Was this Bolvar an undead in WoW lore? Whatever. Divine Shield. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, loses Divine Shield, gain +2 attack. So, yeah. Do I, need to explain why this card is terrible? Or, I mean, this card is, so bad that I might as well put it in. No, that's fine. Bolvar just sucks. He is counter-antithetical to what you want to be doing as a Divine Shield deck. Divine Shield decks want to be buffing their minions just going face. They don't care about, one singular minion like Bolvar to make work around. It just doesn't really do anything for, an aggro Paladin deck. Makes absolutely no sense. So, as I've said a million times over across a million different things, Reno Paladin sucks. It sucks even more in Badlands than it did in Old Doom. And it's, bad. I mean, Spirit of the Badlands, just 3 mana, 3/4, Undead Beast. Battlecry, if your deck has no duplicates, get a permanent Mirage, which gives you a lot of value. And we're past the point in Hearthstone that value in Standard matters. And obviously, we're past the point in Hearthstone where value in Wild matters. It's just such a terrible card. It doesn't do anything for you. Oh, I get 800 Astrolors. Okay, and then I fucking die on turn 3 to Mind Rogue. What? It doesn't matter. This card just does not do anything. Commander Smith. I want to put it in LOL ? But I mean, it saw a tiny bit of play. It saw about as much play as these cards have. I mean, when it came out in Rise of Shadows, if I think correctly, it saw, like I'm saying, it saw a little bit of play. Not because this card is good, because there were other better Secret Synergy cards, and this was just the top end of your deck at 5 mana. It's just not amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I don't really know what else to say about it. It's just a pretty mediocre mid card at best. It saw a tiny bit of play, but that's kind of it. Lothraxion. Lothraxion is a good card. It sees and saw a lot of play in Odd Paladin. It kind of just it kind of just comes and goes in Odd Paladin, where it's really, really good to not that amazing, but it's yeah. And then, in Curator Paladin, it was a demon you could draw. Yeah. I mean, in N'Zoth Paladin, it was a demon that you could resummon as a 5/5, because it's 5 mana, 5/5 demon. Battlecry for the rest of the game. After you summon a Silverhand Recruit, give it Divine Shield. It's just an okay card overall. It's seen a lot of play because it just fits it's just a 30th card, It's a pretty good 30th card in a lot of these decks. Murder Girl saw a lot of play, a lot of play. This card saw play until it rotated out of Standard, and then it saw play in Wild for a long time. It doesn't really see any more play, because it's kind of just worse than, a lot of cards. But it did see a lot of play. 2 mana, 2/1, Murloc, Divine Shield, Death Rattle Shuffle, Murkgurgle Prime, and the Murkgurgle Prime would be 6 mana, I think it was a 6/3 mech Murloc that summoned 4 Murlocs, and that was a lot of stats. It would give them Divine Shield, if I remember correctly. So it's just a lot of fucking stats. It was hard to deal with. And it just was really, really sticky. And it gave you just just another board that you could play for 6 mana. It's just pretty decent. Tyrion Fordring. I mean, I have to put Tyrion in saw a lot of play tier, right? It just did see a lot of play in all the early years of Hearthstone. It's Dr. 8, in the early years of Hearthstone, Tyrion was one of the best cards in the game. What else am I supposed to say? Obviously, this card goes in S tier. 8 mana. It was a 6/6 at a time, but now it's an 8/8. Divine Shield, Taunt, Death Rattle, equip a 5/3 Ashbringer. I mean, you'd play this on 8 your opponent would be like, fuck, I can't kill this. And you beat them in the face. And then they'd be like, okay, now I can kill it. And then you beat them in the face with a 5-3 weapon. And they're like, fuck, man. That's my impression of Hearthstone players in GVG. When... Or no, the TGT, the Grand Tournament, when they would have to play against Mysterious Challenger and Dr. Boom and then Tyrion Curve. I feel bad for those people, because that's like, that was so fucking broken for the time. Barov, obviously, is like one of the best legendaries in Paladin. It's one of the best legendaries ever. Easily like top, 50. I mean, there's a lot of legendaries, maybe like top 100, something like that, but yeah, Barov is so good. Definitely has like a lot of use cases in Paladin. A little less than Warrior, to be honest. I think Barov is better in Warrior than it is in Paladin. However, it's still really good in Paladin. Barov was out at the same time as Librams, so obviously it saw play in Libram Paladin. It's, still sees play in Wild in like Reno and slow control Paladin decks because it synergizes so well with all your like 1 damage AoE spells, or Consecrate, or you can kill it yourself with like Rush, or with an Astalor, and you can get around like Lotheb that way. It's just a really powerful card. Barov, definitely one of those up there cards. Tyr. I'm not actually sure if Tyr has seen play in Standard. I genuinely could not tell you. I've never heard anyone talk about this card. I've never seen any decks with it, but it doesn't seem like it's that terrible of a card. I feel like I maybe saw a video of it in like an Earthen Golem Paladin, and that alone, if that deck was pretty decent, puts Tyr at like saw some play. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to rank Tyr. I think it's just like an okay at best card for Standard, and it's completely unplayable in Wild. So I just put it around cards that are about the same level. Bolvar 4-Dragon, that's a fucking lol. 5 mana, 1/7. Whenever a friendly minion dies, while this is in your hand, gain +1 attack. This is like arguably one of the worst cards ever made. It's like fucking atrociously bad, dude. And then they had to, reprint it with Bolvar Fireblood, but like slightly different. Ooh, it's so terrible. I think that if you craft this card, you are actively like trying to lose. It's just, I don't know how to describe how terrible this card is. Rag Lightlord. This card actually saw a little bit of play. 8 mana, 8/8 elemental. At the end of your turn, restore 8 health to a friendly character. It actually saw a little bit of play in like N'Zoth Paladin. It saw play in just Standard in general. It's like fine, It's 8/8 that can also fight because it's not like Rag. It can attack. And then, it'll heal itself, actually. It'll heal your face. It's just kind of okay. It saw some play in like big Paladin decks of old because, it's just an 8/8. And then it also would heal you because you're playing Big Paladin. You probably took a lot of damage to get to that point. Yeah. Kangor. Kangor is a very good card. I think that although Kangor probably will never actually be that amazing in Standard, I think that Kangor is the best Big Paladin card ever printed. It's never going to be playable in Wild unless, of course, they finally print playable Big Paladin cards in Wild, which they have never done. Sorry. Aside from Allura. Sorry. Allura hard carried that deck, but it's not that Kangor is a bad card. It's that Big Paladin cards are fucking terrible. 5 mana, 3/3, lifesteal, death rattle. Swap this with a minion in your hand and give it lifesteal. Like, that's so good. That's such a good effect. It gives you recursiveness. It gives you, just multiple cards you can cheat out, and it gives you lifesteal on whatever gets cheated out. So if you cheat out a big taunt minion, now it's just like a fuck you aggro, like, because you can play this on like 4. It also has lifesteal itself, so that it can like heal you a little bit. It's just a really good card. Like, this is genuinely a good card. It just doesn't have a good deck to go in, and it probably won't ever. Let's be real here. Blood Matriarch Liadrin. This card is fucking nuts. 2 mana, 3/2. After you summon a minion with less attack than this, give it Divine Shield and Rush. This card's insane to buff. It's insane off of Call to Arms. It's just a really fucking good card. I think that this is like one of my favorite Paladin cards ever because it's really cheap. It's a good, strong effect. It doesn't have like a crazy like tribe to synergize with, so it doesn't have to like be balanced around that way, which a lot of cards do, and it really sucks because a lot of cards just suck because they gave them a tribe for no reason. Kotori could have been, something like a Murloc or something like that, and they'd have to balance around that. But they didn't. It's because they made it, or Naga, because they made it a Kotori, so it's not, right? And then, like, Liadrin's just a really good card. It's seen so much play in Standard, so much play in Wild. It still sees play in Wild. It's just really, really good. It's probably going to see play in Wild until, like, Call to Arms isn't good anymore. That's how good this card is. Toy Captain Tarim. This card is actually currently seeing play in Standard. It's pretty good. 5 mana, 3/7, miniaturize. Battle Cry, set a minion's attack and health to this minion's. When this gets hand buffed, it's really good. When the mini gets hand buffed, it's really good. When the mini isn't hand buffed, it's like a subdue for 1 mana, and it's a minion, so you can like do stuff with minions rather than spells. It's a really good card. We only have 1 expansion to base this off of so far, but I think this card will be good in Standard for its entire life cycle. I mean, it's terrible in Wild, but that just happens, right? Cards like this are usually bad in Wild. Sunkeeper Tarim, however, saw a lot of play. Sunkeeper Tarim is such a strong card that they nerfed the Discover mechanic on class cards because of Tarim. That's how good Sunkeeper Tarim was. You used to run, like, Stonehill Defender, which was a good card, don't get me wrong, but you would run Stonehill Defender in every Paladin deck possible just to get Sunkeeper Tarim. You'd run it in Odd Paladin just to get Sunkeeper Tarim. That's how good Sunkeeper Tarim is. Sunkeeper Tarim saw continual play in Wild for a long time. Tarim was also good in like Even Paladin, which was really good for a while in Standard until Call to Arms got nerfed. Tarim is just so good. I don't really know what else to say about it. 6 mana, 3/7, taunt, battle cry, set all other minions attacking health to 3. It let you buff your board and debuff the enemy board and kill their board pretty consistently. It's just so good. Shirvala the Lion also saw a lot of play. Of course, Shirvala sees play in Holy Wrath Paladin. Holy Wrath Paladin's been, decent to okay over the years up until recently with the Order of the Court change made Shirvala a lot better. But Shirvala saw play in, like, buff Paladin decks because it would cost so much less. It would be a good body. It saw play in, like, Reno Paladin decks. It saw play in, like, Exodia Paladin. It's just, like, a pretty good card overall. I think that Shirvala is just one of those really, really strong staple legendaries that has one really good synergy, yes, but, it's just pretty decent. I honestly think they should make Shirvala an 8/8. I think a 7/5 is just way too weak for today's game. And you're never using Shirvala for the body anyway in Holy Wrath, so it doesn't affect that deck. Because you literally can't play Shirvala, actually. But I just think that, they really should make Shirvala's body better so you can actually run Shirvala justifiably as, a standalone minion. That's Liadrin again. Sidon the Scarlet. 3 mana, 2/2, rush. Whenever this minion gains attack or health, double its attack, or double that amount, sorry. Wherever it is. Is that what that says? Yeah. So, you would play this with, like, just buff spells, obviously. This card, I don't remember if this card was in the game with Blessing of Authority. It might have been, and Blessing of Authority was a really good card. If you would, like, Blessing of Authority this, that would be fucking insane. But this was in the game with Bannerman, which was really good, because you'd play Bannerman, and then your Sidon would be a 4/4. And then you would play Bannerman again, and it would be a 6/6. And then you could buff it, and it would be like a million. And Sidon saw some pretty decent Standard play at the time. It wasn't like it didn't see play like for a long time. I think it was only playable in like 1, maybe 2 expansions. But like, just a good staple Paladin minion, for a hand buff deck, for a board buff deck, things like that. It sees absolutely no play in Wild, though. That's just, the Glass Knight. Bad card. 4 mana, 4/3 Divine Shield. Whenever you restore health, get Divine Shield. I don't even think this is an elemental. If I remember, I don't think it's an elemental. This card sucks, right? Like, it came out, I think, in Witchwood, if I remember correctly. I don't know. And like, it didn't see any play there. I don't think this card has ever seen any play, actually. I think it's just a terrible card. Like, what is this? I don't know. There's another worker flame. Don Honcho! Actually, in a literal sense, Don Honcho is power crept by High Lord Four Dragon because for the longest time, Don Honcho was a 7-mana minion as well. And Four Dragon's just strictly better. I mean, yeah, it's just a terrible card. It's 5 mana, 5/5 now. Battlecry, give a minion in your hand plus 5/5. It used to be 7 mana to do that. I mean, that's fucking terrible. There's just, I mean, like, come on, dude. It's Don Honcho. Everyone knows this card's bad. Everyone knows the card has always been bad. Yeah. And then lastly, Starlight Groove. Starlight Groove saw some play in Standard. I mean, you would play it in that, like, aforementioned, like, lose Divine Shield deck I was talking about earlier. You'd play it with Spotlight. You'd play it with Funk Fin. You'd play it with, I don't know, what's it called? Like the Jitterbug or whatever it's called, the Glowbug, Jittering Glowbug, something like that. And it was, like, okay in that deck, because every time you played a holy... It's 3 mana, give your hero Divine Shield, every time you play a holy spell, refresh it, and it's a holy spell. So it's, like, okay. Spotlight would instantly refresh it, so it was just 2 mana, get a 5/5, and no downside. I mean, it's just like an okay card, honestly. It didn't really see any... It hasn't really seen much play ever since. It sees no play in Wild, which is normal, I would say, for a card like this. I think if this card were around at the same time as Libram Paladin, it would have seen play, because the Librams are all holy spells. And it would have been absurdly broken at that point, but, you know, it happens. Yeah, that's it for all the cards. Here's a better view of it. You have all these ones in S tier, all these ones good, bad. These ones are just outclassed, and these ones are just terrible. I mean, these ones are just so bad. Like, I can't even think of a single deck that ran these cards. That's how bad they are. Anyway, if you enjoy, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think below. Did I get any cards right? Did I get any cards wrong? And I'll see you guys next time. Make sure to join my Discord as well. All right. Peace out.